Hey everybody, it's Glenn, back in this video with the Disney Store exclusive Star Wars Elite Series General Grievous. These are those die-cast action figures that you may remember previously. I compared the Kylo Ren from this series with Hasbro's Star Wars Black Series Kylo Ren. And from that I learned the distinction between these two lines is one that Marvel action figure collectors will be familiar with, as it sort of parallels the situation with Marvel Legends and Marvel Select. So like your Marvel Legends, the Black Series on the left there is 6-inch scale and superposable, and much like Marvel Select, Disney Store's Elite Series is more 7-inch scale-ish, less posable, but possibly a better sculpt. Now initially the Elite Series figures when released back on Force Friday were all from The Force Awakens, but since then every 2 weeks they've been adding a new Elite figure, with each one representing one of the 6 Star Wars movies. Which brings us back to Grievous, the most recently released one, representing Revenge of the Sith. But prior to that, from Phantom Menace, there was Darth Maul, which was released back when I was in deep doing my 31 horror toys in 31 days, so I didn't have a chance to review. I may backtrack and review that at some point, but I'm more eager to crack open Grievous to see how his unique character design gets translated into an action figure. Then between those two they released an Attack of the Clones Anakin Skywalker, which I skipped on because these being made of die-cast metal, that material lends itself more to the more armoured and robotic characters and less the human ones. Before I open Grievous, let's just take a second to look at the packaging back. Here we see the price sticker. He'll set you back £18.95 here in the UK or €24.90 on the continent. Then pause now if you care to read that bio. So here is General Grievous out of packaging, and I have to admit I'm not the biggest fan of the character, but what I am is a fan of really unique character designs, and Grievous has that in spades. And it's a design which I think has been rendered really flippin' well in the sculpt, capturing all the robotic, almost insectoid spindly limbs to creepy effect. Yet the spindliness of those limbs means a lot of... and... I'll only let you suffer that twice so you get the idea, but imagine that happening about 10 times in a row and you end up with one pretty ruddy annoyed reviewer. I'm getting flashbacks of that crap Ant-Man and action figure. So here he is, finally standing, just nobody move, don't even breathe. He's just staying on his feet by the will of the Force alone. He topples one more time and I'll be bloody turning to the dark side. The problem is with this being die-cast, those skinny legs are expected to hold quite a serious heavy chunk of metal that is the torso. It does come with the same display base that all the Elites do. Standing him up without it, forget about it, and standing him up with it, as we've seen, is still tricky. That display base has a single peg which is plugged into a hole in the bottom of his right foot. Then I'm posing the torso so much of its weight is directly above the pegged in foot part, which keeps him standing, although standing very upright, which sucks in a way as I always imagine this character having a hunched posture. Then I'm also having to use the bottom of his cloak there to form a tripod with the legs. And as glaring as his balance issues are, I guess I should try and focus on some of the silver linings, one of those being the cloak. And not just as a balancing aid, it's rendered in vinyl and the sculpt of it has a very gestural flow which lends a very dramatic effect to the action figure. You can almost imagine it swishing about as he marches down the corridor of a starship. And now taking a closer look, I like the head sculpt with its long drawn out faceplate and the subtle shading in the deco either sides of that faceplate. And with the packaging back trumpeting that the Disney Store have made these in collaboration with Lucasfilm, and those guys signing off on these is evident in the high level of screen accuracy we see in the sculpt. And my favourite aspect are the eyes, the way that they're recessed in the sculpt, making them quite sinister, and then the deco of the yellow eyes with the kind of reptilian eye-shaped pupil. The cloak is removable, so let's remove that actually, as it will make looking at the articulation much easier. So the head is able to rotate side to side, and surprisingly there is some up and down movement of the head. Let's turn him to the side actually so you get a better idea of just how much his head moves up and down. And breathe out. He has waist rotation. His shoulder articulation is all ball and socketed, so there's a ball sitting in a socket in his body there, so both the arms could rotate using that ball. And that ball forms a peg which extends out of the shoulder, splits into two balls onto which each of the arms are attached. It's some interesting engineering, but a bit flawed, as you see there, in that the joint isn't tight enough often to hold the weight of the arm up. The elbow joint is again a ball and socket, so the lower arm is able to rotate, and there is also some slight hinging action. Then at the wrist, the hand, you guessed it, it's a ball and socket joint, so it's able to rotate, and there is some slight up and down movement. Now, just in the course of this review, the shoulder joints have become very loose to the point that they're falling off. I mean, it can be popped back on, but all the tightness in that joint has gone. And that's before they're even bearing the extra weight of holding his lightsaber accessories. He comes with 4 for each of his hands, which is cool. However, the blades of them aren't rendered in the translucent plastic we often see with action figure lightsabers. It's just painted plastic, but what is cool is that the hilts of each one are individual sculpts, so I suspect he's hunted down 4 different Jedis to gain these. So let's carefully slot the lightsabers into his hand. That one seems too big for that hand. Let's try it down here, and some reason I'm whispering like that's actually helping me. Thinking of it, this is taking me back to being a kid and playing Buckaroo with my brother. Does that game still exist? So let's carefully place this guitar on the donkey's saddle, and oh no, he's got floppy arm syndrome under the weight of that lightsaber. But let's return to articulation, and at the hips, like much of the articulation, it's a ball and socket joint. Yet again, the tightness in the joint just isn't there to support the weight of the leg though. And then at the knee, there's a hinge. I think had I have been making this, I'd have cut all the articulation below the waist just to allow for a more sound, structured base. The hip joints just add to the instability, and it's sculpted in this stepping pose. It's not like you can achieve anything else with the articulation anyway. For a size comparison, I've dug out Hasbro's 6-inch Black Series Boba Fett, and I've just reminded myself how good that action figure is. And as you can see, Grievous stands a clear head and shoulders above Boba. Let's break out the measuring tape to give you an exact measurement. He stands 7.5 inches tall. I mean, not being human, you could maybe fudge Grievous into a 6-inch scale collection, but to that end, if you're a fan of the character, you may as well just cross your fingers and hope that Hasbro get round to including him in their Black Series. I mean, Hasbro would only need to make it so it actually stands up, and it would already beat this one. You know, I was so looking forward to this Grievous, and it just really sucks because the sculpt is there. However, that's for naught, as it's just so fundamentally flawed. Making something that simply stands is action figure 101. I mean, if I were to add this to my display shelf, I don't think it'd last long before I find it on the floor in umpteen different broken pieces. So unless you've got half the brain of Ponda Baba, you can no doubt guess I'd give this a definite skip, unless that is you want to keep it mint in package, and I admit in package it looks pretty boss. Anyway, click this video for a look at a better Elite action figure in the form of the Kylo Ren one in an easy to consume comparison with Hasbro's Black Series Kylo Ren, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye.